I'm Sarah, 29 years old, and last Wednesday, my mother-in-law humiliated me so badly in a baby store that a stranger had to intervene. What happened next changed my marriage forever. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments if you've ever had in-laws who made your life hell, and hit that like button if you think boundaries matter in marriage. I'm 7 months pregnant with my first child, standing in Little Luxuries, one of Beverly Hills' most exclusive baby boutiques. After months of research, I'd finally saved enough from my recent promotion to buy the organic cotton onesies, handcrafted mobile, and special receiving blanket I'd been dreaming about for my baby's nursery. The boutique was everything I'd imagined: soft lighting, gentle classical music, and displays of the most beautiful baby items I'd ever seen. Other expectant mothers moved quietly through the aisles, their faces glowing with the same anticipation I felt. Emma, the sweet sales associate, had been helping me for over an hour, carefully wrapping each item I'd chosen with tissue paper. "These organic cotton pieces are our most popular," she'd said with genuine enthusiasm. "You've made excellent choices for your little one." For the first time in months, I felt completely in control of my own pregnancy experience. No one questioning my decisions, no one making me feel inadequate, just pure joy in preparing for my baby's arrival. That's when the boutique's elegant glass door chimed, and my world came crashing down. "Sarah Smith, what on earth are you doing here?" The voice cut through the peaceful atmosphere like a chainsaw through silk. I turned to see Linda Smith, my mother-in-law, striding toward me with her sister Patricia, trailing behind like a supporting army. Linda's perfectly styled silver hair didn't move as she walked, and her designer handbag swung with the determination of a weapon. At 58, Linda commanded attention wherever she went. A retired high school principal, she had the kind of presence that made grown adults feel like misbehaving students. Today, she wore a cream-colored blazer and pearls that screamed authority and judgment. "Linda," I managed, my hand instinctively moving to my rounded belly. "I didn't know you were shopping today." "Shopping?" she laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Honey, this place is way out of your league. Aren't you supposed to be on a budget?" The comment hit like a slap. Emma, who had been standing beside me with my carefully selected items, took a small step back. I could feel the other customers starting to stare. "I got a promotion last month," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm now senior marketing manager at my company. I can afford these things." Linda's eyes swept over the items in Emma's hands with the same expression she might use to examine roadkill. "Organic cotton onesies, $150 for baby clothes they'll outgrow in 2 months. Sarah, this is exactly the kind of irresponsible spending that worries me about you becoming a mother." Patricia nodded in agreement, her mousy brown hair bobbing. "Linda's right, dear. When Michael was a baby, we bought perfectly good clothes from department stores. He turned out just fine." Heat rose to my cheeks. "These aren't just clothes. They're chemical-free, sustainably made, and better for the baby's sensitive skin. I've done extensive research." "Research?" Linda interrupted, her voice rising enough that a pregnant woman 2 displays over turned to look. "You think reading mommy blogs makes you an expert? I raised Michael perfectly well without all this organic nonsense." Emma cleared her throat softly. "Actually, Mrs. Smith, organic cotton is much gentler on newborn skin. Many pediatricians recommend—" "I wasn't talking to you," Linda snapped, not even looking at the sales associate. Her attention remained fixed on me like a predator sizing up prey. "Sarah, you're about to be responsible for my grandchild. This kind of wasteful spending shows a serious lack of judgment." My hands were shaking now, but I forced myself to stand straighter. "Linda, this is my baby. These are my choices to make." "Your baby?" The laugh that escaped her was cold and calculating. "You mean my son's baby, the baby he'll be working overtime to support while you waste money on overpriced baby clothes." The unfairness of it took my breath away. I worked 50-hour weeks at my marketing job. My salary was substantial. And with my recent promotion, I was earning more than I ever had. But Linda had a way of making me feel like a gold-digging burden, no matter what I achieved. "I have my own income," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not spending Michael's money." "Your little marketing job?" Patricia chimed in with fake sweetness. "That's cute, honey, but let's be realistic about your career prospects once the baby comes." The boutique had gone nearly silent except for the soft classical music. I could feel every eye in the store on us, could practically hear phones being pulled out to record what was clearly becoming a scene. Emma looked mortified, clutching my items like she was afraid to move. Linda stepped closer, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a reasonable tone, but felt more like a threat. "Sarah, I'm trying to help you here. You're young, you don't understand how expensive raising a child really is. When you're up all night with a crying baby, struggling to keep up with the demands of motherhood, you'll understand why I'm concerned about these frivolous purchases." Something in her tone, the way she said demands of motherhood, like I was doomed to fail, made something snap inside me. This wasn't about baby clothes or money. This was about control. This was about Linda's determination to prove that I wasn't good enough for her son or capable of raising her grandchild. "These aren't frivolous purchases," I said, my voice stronger now. "They're thoughtful choices I've made for my child, based on research and my own values." Linda's eyes narrowed. "Your values? Like wasting money on things that don't matter while my son works himself to death?" "Michael works normal hours at a job he loves," I replied. "And I work just as hard as he does." "At a startup that could fail any day," Patricia added helpfully. "At least Michael has job security." The dismissal of my career, my intelligence, my ability to make decisions about my own child. It all crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. I was done. Done apologizing for taking up space. Done explaining my choices to people who had already decided I wasn't worthy. Done letting Linda undermine me in front of strangers. "You know what?" I said, reaching for my purse. "Emma, I'll take everything we discussed." Linda's face went red. "Don't you dare ignore me when I'm trying to help you." But I was already pulling out my credit card, my hand steady for the first time since she'd walked in. "I'm not ignoring you, Linda. I'm making a choice, my choice, about my baby, with my money." What happened next would change everything. But before Linda could respond, the boutique door chimed again, and a woman's authoritative voice cut through the tension like a knife through butter. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help overhearing this conversation. And I have to say something. But let me back up and tell you how I got to this moment, standing pregnant and humiliated in a baby boutique, while my mother-in-law publicly questioned my fitness to be a mother. When Michael and I met 3 years ago at a tech conference in San Francisco, it felt like fate. He was presenting his company's new cybersecurity software, and I was there representing my previous marketing agency. We ended up talking until 3 a.m. in the hotel lobby about everything from artificial intelligence to our shared love of Korean barbecue, though for very different reasons. I born and raised in Las Vegas, while Michael discovered Las Vegas culture through college friends and never looked back. Michael Smith, yes, we both have the last name Smith, which confused people constantly, was everything I'd been looking for. At 31, he was successful, funny, and refreshingly secure in himself. Unlike other guys I'd dated, he never seemed intimidated by my career ambitions, or the fact that I could hold my own in any conversation about business strategy or market analysis. Our whirlwind romance moved fast. Within 6 months, I'd relocated to LA to be closer to him, landing my current position at TechFlow Innovations, a rising startup in the digital marketing space. A year later, we were engaged. Everything seemed perfect, except for one significant problem: Linda Smith. From our very first meeting, I could tell Linda had reservations about me. It wasn't anything she said directly. Linda was far too sophisticated for obvious prejudice. Instead, it was the way her smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me, the subtle questions about my background, my family's financial situation, my long-term goals. "It's wonderful that you're so career-focused, dear," she'd said during our engagement dinner, her voice honey-sweet with underlying concern. "But I hope you understand that family comes first in our household. Michael needs a partner who will support his ambitions, not compete with them." I'd laughed it off at the time, telling Michael later that his mother just needed time to get to know me. He'd agreed, wrapping me in his arms and promising that she'd come around. "Mom's just protective," he'd said. "Once she sees how happy you make me, she'll love you as much as I do." 2 years later, I was still waiting for that to happen. The pattern had been established early and never changed. At family gatherings, Linda would ask about my work with polite disinterest, before launching into lengthy stories about Michael's achievements. When I got promoted to senior marketing manager last month, a position that came with a 40% salary increase and stock options, Linda's response was, "That's nice, dear. Michael, tell Sarah about your new project with the aerospace company." Michael, bless his heart, never seemed to notice. As an only child who'd been the center of his mother's universe for 31 years, he was used to being the focus of every conversation. It wasn't malicious. He simply didn't recognize the dynamics at play. When I tried to explain how his mother made me feel, he'd get defensive. "Mom doesn't mean anything by it," he'd say. "She's just old-fashioned. She shows love by worrying." But this wasn't worry, this was control. And it had only gotten worse since our pregnancy announcement 3 months ago. I'll never forget the day we told Linda she was going to be a grandmother. We'd planned it carefully, inviting her over for Sunday dinner and waiting until dessert to share the news. Michael had been practically vibrating with excitement, barely able to contain himself through the meal. "Mom," he'd said, pulling out the ultrasound photo, "we have something amazing to tell you. You're going to be a grandmother." The silence that followed lasted exactly 10 seconds. I counted. Linda stared at the ultrasound image, her expression unreadable. Finally, she looked up with what I can only describe as resigned acceptance. "Well," she said slowly, "I suppose congratulations are in order. How far along are you, Sarah? Not how exciting or I'm so happy for you." Just a clinical question, delivered with the enthusiasm of someone discussing tax preparation. The contrast with my own parents' reaction was stark. When we'd called them the night before, my mother had screamed with joy so loudly that my father thought something was wrong. They'd immediately started planning visits, asking about nursery themes, and arguing over whether they preferred Grandma and Grandpa, or Halabioji and Halmayoni. Linda's reaction set the tone for the entire pregnancy. Every decision I made was questioned, every choice scrutinized. When I mentioned wanting to breastfeed, Linda launched into a lecture about how formula had been perfectly adequate for Michael. When I expressed interest in natural childbirth, she scheduled herself a coffee date with my obstetrician to discuss concerns about my birth plan. The breaking point had been building for weeks. Last month, Linda announced she was planning a baby shower for me, without consulting me about the date, location, guest list, or theme. When I gently suggested I might want some input, she'd looked genuinely surprised. "Oh, Sarah, you have enough to worry about with the pregnancy. I'm happy to handle all the details. I know exactly what you need." When I tried to explain that I'd already been planning my own shower with my sister and best friend, Linda's response was swift and devastating. "Well, you can have your little party too, I suppose, but the family shower will be the real celebration." Michael, caught between his mother and his pregnant wife, had tried to find a middle ground that satisfied no one. "Maybe you two could plan it together," he'd suggested weakly. "Combine your ideas?" That's when I realized that Michael, despite all his wonderful qualities, had never learned to set boundaries with his mother. In 31 years, Linda had never been told no by her son, and she wasn't about to start now. The situation had reached a crisis point 2 weeks ago when Linda let herself into our apartment. She had a key for emergencies, and rearranged the nursery items I'd already purchased. I came home from work to find my carefully chosen decorations, replaced with items from Linda's preferred store, complete with a note explaining how her choices were more practical and age-appropriate. When I called Michael at work, crying with frustration, his response was the same as always. "Can't you just go along with it this time? She means well, and it's easier than fighting." Easier for whom? Not for me. The pregnant woman whose autonomy was being systematically dismantled by a woman who'd decided I was unfit to make decisions about my own child. That's what brought me to Little Luxuries that Wednesday morning. I'd taken a personal day from work, determined to buy the specific items I wanted for my baby without input, interference, or helpful suggestions from anyone. It was supposed to be a peaceful, joyful experience, just me, my baby bump, and the freedom to choose exactly what I wanted for my child's nursery. I should have known Linda would find a way to track me down. Michael had probably mentioned my shopping plans in passing, not realizing his mother would take it as an invitation to intervene. She had an uncanny ability to appear whenever I was doing something independently, as if my autonomy was a personal threat that required immediate correction. Standing in that boutique, surrounded by organic cotton onesies and handcrafted mobiles, I'd felt powerful for the first time in months. These were my choices, made with my money, based on my research and my values. For 45 beautiful minutes, I'd been just another expectant mother preparing for her baby's arrival. Until Linda walked in and reminded me that in her world, I would never be trusted to make the right decisions on my own. Now, back to that moment when everything exploded. "You know what?" I said, reaching for my purse with newfound determination. "Emma, I'll take everything we discussed." Linda's perfectly composed mask slipped for the first time, her face flushing an angry red that clashed with her cream blazer. "Don't you dare ignore me when I'm trying to help you." Emma, bless her heart, looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Her hands trembled slightly as she held my carefully selected items, clearly unsure whether to proceed with the transaction or wait for the family drama to resolve itself. "I'm not ignoring you, Linda," I said, pulling out my credit card with hands that were finally steady. "I'm making a choice, my choice, about my baby, with my money." "Your money?" Patricia scoffed from behind her sister. "Honey, when you're married, there's no such thing as my money and his money. It's family money, and family decisions should be made together." "This isn't a family decision," I replied, turning to face them both. "This is a mother choosing clothes for her child, that's it." Linda's laugh was sharp and cold. "A mother? Sarah, you're not a mother yet. You have no idea what motherhood actually requires. And based on what I'm seeing here today, I'm not sure you ever will." The cruelty of the statement hit me like a physical blow. Around us, the boutique had gone completely silent. Even the classical music seemed muted. A young couple browsing cribs near the back of the store had stopped pretending to shop and were openly watching our confrontation. An older woman by the receiving blankets was recording with her phone, probably planning to post this family meltdown on social media. Emma cleared her throat softly. "Perhaps we could complete this transaction quickly," she suggested in a whisper that somehow felt louder than shouting. "There won't be a transaction," Linda announced, stepping forward and reaching for the items in Emma's hands. "Sarah, you're being ridiculous, and I won't allow you to waste Michael's hard-earned money on this overpriced nonsense." "Allow me?" The words came out sharper than I'd intended. "Linda, you don't get to allow or disallow anything I do. I'm not your child." "No, but you're carrying mine," she shot back, her voice rising high enough that I could see other customers throughout the store turning our way. "That baby is my grandchild, and I have a say in how he or she is raised." "Actually, you don't," I said, placing a protective hand on my belly. "Not until this baby is born. And even then, only within the boundaries Michael and I set." Patricia gasped, as if I'd said something truly shocking. "Sarah, that's no way to speak to your mother-in-law. Where is your respect?" "Respect?" I laughed, and it came out bitter and tired. "Where's her respect for me, for my intelligence, for my ability to make decisions about my own child?" Linda stepped closer, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a reasonable tone, but felt more like a threat. "Sarah, I understand you're emotional. Pregnancy hormones can make women irrational, but you need to listen to someone with experience here." The condescension was breathtaking. Pregnancy hormones. As if my frustration with months of being undermined and controlled was just some biological malfunction that made me incapable of rational thought. "I'm not irrational," I said quietly. "I'm informed. I've read every parenting book published in the last 5 years. I've consulted with pediatricians, nutritionists, and child development experts. These choices aren't impulsive. They're researched and deliberate." "Research," Linda scoffed. "You can't raise a child from books, Sarah. You need intuition, experience, and wisdom. Things that come from actually having children, not from reading articles on the internet." Emma, who had been standing frozen with my items during this entire exchange, finally found her voice. "Ma'am, I should mention that these organic cotton pieces are actually recommended by most pediatricians for newborns with sensitive skin. And the mobile Sarah chose has been designed by child development specialists to promote visual tracking and—" "I didn't ask for your opinion," Linda snapped, whirling on the young sales associate with such venom that Emma actually took a step backward. "This is a family matter." "Don't talk to her like that," I said, my voice sharp with anger. "Emma's been nothing but helpful and professional." "Professional would be not encouraging wasteful spending by vulnerable pregnant women," Patricia chimed in, clearly trying to support her sister's position. That was it. The last thread of my patience snapped. "Vulnerable?" I stood as tall as my pregnant belly would allow, feeling 7 months of suppressed anger finally breaking free. I'm not vulnerable, Patricia. I'm educated, employed, financially stable, and perfectly capable of making decisions about my own life. Then why are you making such poor ones? Linda shot back. Spending hundreds of dollars on baby clothes when you should be saving for college funds and emergencies? Because I can afford both. The words came out louder than I'd intended, echoing through the now silent boutique. Because I work 50 hours a week at a job I'm excellent at, making more money than I've ever made in my life. Because this baby is wanted and planned for, and I've been preparing for months to give him or her the best possible start in life. Linda's eyes narrowed dangerously. Your little marketing job is not little, I interrupted. I'm senior marketing manager at one of the fastest growing tech companies in Los Angeles. I manage a team of 12 people and a budget of over $2 million. I'm not some irresponsible child playing with her husband's money. I'm a professional woman, making thoughtful choices about my child. Your child, Linda repeated, her voice dripping with disdain. You keep saying that, but this baby is Michael's too. My grandchild. And frankly, based on what I'm seeing today, I'm concerned about your priorities as a future mother. The accusation hung in the air like poison. Around us, I could feel the weight of every eye in the store. The judgment of strangers who were witnessing this very personal attack on my fitness to be a parent. My priorities? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. My priority is giving my child the healthiest, safest start possible. What exactly is wrong with that? Your priority is proving something, Linda said, stepping even closer. Proving you're better than everyone else with your organic this and handcrafted that. You're so busy trying to be the perfect mother that you can't see how selfish you're being. Selfish? The word came out like a gasp. How is wanting the best for my baby selfish? Because it's not about the baby, Linda's composure finally cracked completely. Her voice rising to near-shouting levels. It's about your ego. Your need to show everyone how superior your choices are, how much more enlightened you are than the rest of us who raise children just fine without all this expensive organic nonsense. The boutique erupted in whispers and murmurs. Someone's phone camera was definitely recording now, and I could see Emma looking frantically toward the back of the store, probably hoping her manager would intervene. That's not true, I said, but my voice was shaking now, whether from anger or hurt, I couldn't tell. Isn't it? Linda pressed her advantage, sensing weakness. You chose the most expensive store in Beverly Hills, the most expensive items in that store, and you're doing it all to make some kind of statement. Well, let me make a statement too. Before I could react, before Emma could move, before anyone could stop her, Linda lunged forward and grabbed the carefully wrapped items from Emma's hands. The beautiful organic cotton onesies, the handcrafted mobile, the receiving blanket I'd fallen in love with, everything I'd spent the morning choosing with such care. And then, with a look of pure rage on her face, Linda threw them all on the floor. The packages scattered across the pristine white tiles of little luxuries, tissue paper flying, delicate items spilling out of their wrapping. The mobile's carefully crafted wooden pieces clattered against the floor. The soft organic cotton onesies landed in a pile near my feet. The entire boutique gasped in unison. Emma let out a small cry of distress. Patricia looked shocked at her sister's extreme reaction. And I stood there, 7 months pregnant and utterly humiliated, staring at my baby's clothes scattered across the floor like garbage. There, Linda said, breathing hard but looking satisfied with her dramatic gesture. That's what I think of your precious organic choices. Overpriced trash that belongs exactly where it is right now. For a moment, I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't process what had just happened. This woman had just thrown my unborn child's belongings on the floor of a public store in front of a dozen strangers. When I finally found my voice, it came out as barely a whisper. Pick them up. Excuse me? Linda's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. Pick them up, I repeated, louder this time. Right now. I will not, Linda said with a defiant tilt of her chin. Maybe now you'll come to your senses and realize how ridiculous you've been. That's when I felt something shift inside me. Not the baby, though he or she had been kicking frantically throughout this confrontation. Something deeper, something fundamental about who I was and what I was willing to accept. I bent down as carefully as my pregnant belly would allow and began gathering my baby's scattered belongings. Each item I picked up felt heavier than it should, weighted with months of accumulated hurt and disrespect. "Sarah, what are you doing?" Linda demanded. "Leave that mess there. Let the employees clean it up." I looked up at her from my position on the floor, still gathering the clothes that had been thrown down like garbage. "I'm taking care of my baby's things," I said clearly. "Something I'm apparently going to have to do without your help or support." "You're being dramatic," Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. Even she seemed shaken by what Linda had done. "Am I?" I stood up slowly, my arms full of rescued items, and looked Linda directly in the eyes. "Tell me, Linda, what exactly would you call what just happened here?" Before she could answer, the boutique door chimed again, and a new voice cut through the tension with professional authority. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help overhearing this conversation, and I have to say something." The woman who entered Little Luxuries commanded immediate attention. She was probably in her mid-40s, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun, and intelligent brown eyes behind stylish, tortoiseshell glasses. Her navy blue blazer and pearl earrings suggested success, but it was her bearing, confident, authoritative, unshakable, that made everyone in the boutique turn toward her. "Ma'am, this is a private family matter," Linda said quickly, clearly hoping to shut down any interference before it could begin. "Actually," the woman replied, stepping further into the store with the kind of purposeful stride that suggested she was used to being listened to, "when you're loudly berating a pregnant woman in a public establishment and throwing her possessions on the floor, it stops being private." Linda's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Patricia took a nervous step backward. Even the other customers seemed to lean in, sensing that something significant was about to happen. The woman looked directly at me, her expression softening with genuine concern. "Are you all right, honey? That looked pretty traumatic." I nodded, still clutching my rescued baby items against my chest. "I'm okay, thank you for asking." "No, you're not okay," she said firmly but kindly. "No pregnant woman should be subjected to what I just witnessed." She turned back to Linda, and her voice took on a steely edge. "And you should be absolutely ashamed of yourself." "Now wait just a minute," Linda sputtered, her face reddening. "You don't understand the situation here. This is my daughter-in-law, and she's making irresponsible financial decisions that—" "Stop right there," the woman interrupted, holding up one hand. "I understand the situation perfectly. I've been standing outside the store for the past 10 minutes, listening to you verbally abuse a pregnant woman, question her intelligence, dismiss her career, and attack her fitness to be a mother. What I just witnessed was appalling." "Who are you to judge our family dynamics?" Patricia demanded, finding her voice for the first time since this stranger had arrived. The woman reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, handing it to Linda with a calm smile that somehow managed to be both professional and intimidating. "Dr. Melissa Rodriguez, Chief of Pediatrics at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. I've been practicing medicine for 22 years, and I've dedicated my career to child welfare and family health." The boutique went completely silent. Even the soft classical music seemed to pause in deference to this revelation. Linda stared at the business card like it might bite her. "Doctor?" Emma whispered, her eyes wide with something approaching awe. "Dr. Rodriguez," I managed, feeling a flutter of hope in my chest. "I've read about your work. You're the one who developed the new guidelines for newborn care protocols." She smiled warmly at me. "I am, and based on what I overheard, you've done your homework. Every single choice you made today, the organic cotton, the handcrafted mobile designed for visual development, the chemical-free materials, these are exactly what I recommend to my patients." Linda's face went from red to pale in a matter of seconds. "Well, I didn't realize." "You didn't realize because you didn't ask," Dr. Rodriguez said calmly. "You made assumptions based on price rather than medical necessity. Those overpriced organic cotton onesies. They prevent contact dermatitis in newborns with sensitive skin. That ridiculous mobile? It's designed to promote proper visual tracking development in the first months of life." She stepped closer to the scattered items I'd gathered, gently taking one of the onesies from my arms to examine it. "This is actually the exact brand I recommend to parents at Cedars-Sinai. We've done studies showing that organic cotton reduces the risk of allergic reactions in newborns by 60% compared to conventional cotton treated with chemical softeners." 60%, I asked, feeling vindicated and emotional at the same time. 60%, she confirmed. Your research was thorough and your choices were medically sound. Any pediatrician worth their degree would approve of every item you selected today." Linda was speechless, which might have been the first time in her adult life. The business card trembled slightly in her hands as she stared at it. Dr. Rodriguez turned her attention back to me. "What's your background, if you don't mind me asking? Your understanding of child development seems quite advanced for a first-time mother." "I work in marketing," I said, then caught myself. After Linda's constant dismissals, I'd started minimizing my own achievements. "Actually, I'm Senior Marketing Manager at TechFlow Innovations. I specialize in consumer behavior analysis and evidence-based decision-making. When I found out I was pregnant, I applied the same research methodology to parenting that I use in my professional work." "Smart approach," Dr. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. "Evidence-based parenting leads to better outcomes for children. I wish more parents took your approach instead of relying on outdated advice or family pressure." The pointed comment wasn't lost on anyone in the boutique. Linda's face was now completely pale, and Patricia was staring at the floor like she wanted to disappear through it. "Dr. Rodriguez," Emma interjected hesitantly, "would you mind if I asked about the mobile? We've had several customers question whether handcrafted items are worth the investment." "Absolutely worth it," Dr. Rodriguez replied immediately. "Mass-produced mobiles often use colors and patterns that can actually overstimulate developing vision. The one Sarah chose uses the perfect contrast ratios and movement patterns to encourage healthy visual development without overwhelming the nervous system." She picked up the mobile pieces from my arms, examining them with professional interest. "See these specific color combinations? This graduated pattern of shapes? This is exactly what we recommend for optimal infant brain development. Whoever designed this understands the science." I felt tears pricking at my eyes. After months of having my choices questioned and my intelligence doubted, hearing a respected medical professional validate my research felt like vindication and relief all rolled into one overwhelming emotion. "I spent weeks researching that mobile," I said quietly. "I read studies about visual development, consulted pediatric websites, even watched videos about infant perception. I wanted to make sure I was choosing the best option for my baby's development." "And you did," Dr. Rodriguez said firmly. "Your dedication to your child's well-being is exactly what good parenting looks like." Linda finally found her voice, though it came out much smaller than her usual commanding tone. I was just concerned about the expense. These items are quite costly." "Costly compared to what?" Dr. Rodriguez asked mildly. "Compared to the medical bills you'll face if the baby develops contact dermatitis from chemical-treated fabrics. Compared to the developmental delays that can result from inadequate visual stimulation. Good prenatal preparation isn't an expense. It's an investment in your grandchild's health and development." The word grandchild seemed to hit Linda like a physical blow. For the first time since this confrontation began, she seemed to realize that her attacks on my parenting choices were actually attacks on what was best for her own grandchild. Dr. Rodriguez wasn't finished. She turned to address the small crowd of customers who had gathered to watch this drama unfold. "For anyone else who might be shopping for newborns, I want to be clear. Organic, chemical-free baby items aren't luxury purchases or status symbols. They're medical necessities for developing immune systems. Any parent who can afford these items should absolutely choose them." Then she did something unexpected. She reached into her purse and pulled out another business card, this one different from the one she'd given Linda. "Sarah, I don't usually do this, but I'm impressed by your research methodology and your commitment to evidence-based parenting. My medical practice has been looking for someone to help us develop educational content for new parents. Blog posts, social media content, maybe even some video materials explaining child development basics to expecting mothers." My heart stopped. "You're offering me work?" "I'm offering you an opportunity," she corrected with a smile. "Freelance at first, but if it goes well, it could develop into something more substantial. We need someone who can translate medical research into accessible, practical advice for parents. Based on what I've seen today, you might be exactly what we're looking for." I stared at the business card, barely able to process what was happening. In the span of 10 minutes, I'd gone from being humiliated and attacked to being professionally validated and offered a career opportunity by one of the most respected pediatricians in Los Angeles. I would love that," I managed to say. "I would absolutely love that." "Excellent," Dr. Rodriguez said. Why don't you email me next week, and we can set up a proper meeting to discuss the details? Linda, who had been growing paler by the minute, finally spoke up. Doctor, I think there may have been some misunderstanding here. I wasn't trying to be harmful. I was concerned about maintaining control, Dr. Rodriguez finished calmly. I've seen it before, unfortunately. Family members who undermine pregnant women's confidence and decision-making abilities, usually under the guise of being helpful or experienced. She looked directly at Linda with the kind of steady gaze that probably made medical residents tremble. What you did here today, the public humiliation, the attacks on her intelligence, the physical destruction of her property, that's not helpful or supportive. That's abusive behavior, and it's harmful to both mother and baby. Abusive? Linda gasped. That's a very strong word, doctor. It's the correct word, doctor. Rodriguez replied without hesitation. Verbal abuse, emotional manipulation, and deliberate undermining of a pregnant woman's confidence can actually impact fetal development. Stress hormones cross the placental barrier. When you attack her, you're potentially affecting your grandchild's health. The silence that followed was deafening. Linda looked like she might faint. Patricia was studying her shoes with intense concentration. Emma was watching with wide eyes, probably mentally taking notes for future customer service training. Dr. Rodriguez turned back to me, her expression softening again. Sarah, you seem like a wonderful mother already. Trust your instincts, trust your research, and don't let anyone make you doubt your ability to care for your child. Then she did something that surprised everyone, including me. She bent down and helped me gather the remaining scattered items from the floor, handling each piece with the same care I would have shown. Your baby is lucky to have a mother who cares this much about making informed decisions, she said, as she handed me the last onesie. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. As Dr. Rodriguez straightened up and prepared to leave, she paused and looked once more at Linda. Mrs. Smith, I hope you'll think seriously about the kind of grandmother you want to be. Your grandchild will benefit much more from your support of their mother than from your criticism of her choices. And with that, Dr. Melissa Rodriguez walked out of Little Luxuries, leaving behind a boutique full of stunned customers and one completely transformed family dynamic. The silence that followed Dr. Rodriguez's exit was deafening. Linda stood frozen, still clutching the business card like evidence of her humiliation. Patricia remained focused on her shoes, as if they contained the secrets of the universe. Emma looked like she wasn't sure whether to laugh, cry, or call security. The other customers, who had been riveted by the drama, began slowly dispersing. A few approached me with words of support before leaving. Good for you, honey, whispered an elderly woman with kind eyes. You stick to your guns. A younger pregnant woman touched my arm gently. I'm definitely coming back for those organic onesies after hearing all that, she said with a conspiratorial smile. Even more surprising, several customers stopped to thank Emma for her patience and professionalism, with one woman specifically praising the store for carrying medically recommended products. What had started as a humiliating scene was somehow transforming into a vindication of everything I'd chosen. But Linda wasn't finished. Well, she said, her voice shaky but determined to regain some control. I suppose we should be grateful that doctor was here to clarify things. I turned to look at her, still holding my rescued baby items. Clarify things? Linda, she didn't clarify anything. She confirmed what I already knew, that I'd done my research and made good choices for my baby. Our baby, Linda corrected automatically, then seemed to realize how that sounded. I mean Michael's baby too. Yes, Michael's baby too, I agreed. But Michael trusts me to make these decisions. He's never questioned my research or my choices. Only you have. Patricia finally looked up from her shoes. Sarah, Linda was just trying to help. She has experience. Experience from 30 years ago, I interrupted, feeling stronger than I had in months. Medicine has advanced since then. We know more about child development, nutrition, and safety than we did when Michael was born. Dr. Rodriguez just confirmed that. Linda's face flushed again. I raised Michael perfectly well without all this scientific nonsense. And Michael turned out wonderful, I acknowledged. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement, or that new research should be ignored. Would you want Michael to use 30-year-old software at work instead of the latest technology? The analogy hit home. Linda prided herself on Michael's success in tech. frequently bragging about his innovations and forward-thinking approach. Emma, who had been quietly rewrapping my items during this exchange, finally spoke up. "Mrs. Smith, would you like me to ring these up for you now?" I nodded gratefully. "Yes, please, all of them." As Emma began scanning items, Linda made one last attempt to assert control. "Sarah, don't you think you should discuss such an expensive purchase with Michael first?" The question was so loaded, so designed to undermine my autonomy, that I almost laughed. "Linda, I don't need Michael's permission to spend my own money on items for our baby, just like he doesn't need my permission to buy things he wants. But as a married couple, we trust each other's judgment," I said firmly. "We discuss major financial decisions together, but this isn't a major financial decision for us. This is a mother preparing for her child." Emma handed me the receipt with a warm smile. "Your total is $847, and Mrs. Smith, that doctor was right. You made excellent choices today." As I signed the receipt, I felt a surge of pride and accomplishment. Not just because I'd bought what I wanted, but because I'd stood up for myself in a way I never had before. Linda watched the transaction with visible frustration. "I suppose we should head home," she said to Patricia. "I need to call Michael and tell him about this incident." "What incident?" I asked, turning to face her directly. "Are you going to tell him that a pediatrician confirmed I made excellent choices for our baby, or are you going to tell him that you threw his child's clothes on the floor of a store?" Linda's mouth opened and closed several times. Patricia looked uncomfortable. Because I continued, gathering my beautiful little luxuries shopping bags. "I'm absolutely planning to tell Michael everything that happened here today, including Dr. Rodriguez's job offer." With that, I walked out of the boutique with my head held high, leaving Linda and Patricia to process what had just transpired. The drive home was surreal. I kept replaying the scene in my mind, hardly believing what had happened. Not just Linda's extreme behavior, but my own response to it. For the first time in our relationship, I hadn't backed down. I hadn't apologized. I hadn't tried to smooth things over or find a middle ground, and it felt incredible. My phone started buzzing before I even got home. 3 missed calls from Michael, 2 text messages from Linda, and 1 voicemail from Patricia. I ignored them all. For once, I was going to be the one controlling the narrative. When I walked into our apartment, Michael was pacing in the living room with his phone pressed to his ear. "Mom, just calm down and tell me exactly what happened," he was saying. He looked up when he saw me, relief flooding his face. "Sarah's here now. Let me talk to her and call you back." He hung up and immediately wrapped me in his arms. "Are you okay?" Mom called and she was almost hysterical. Something about a doctor and a scene at a baby store. I set down my shopping bags and took a deep breath. "Michael, we need to talk. And I mean really talk. Not just you listening to your mother's version and then asking me to keep the peace." Something in my tone must have warned him that this conversation was going to be different from our usual discussions about his mother. He sat down on the couch and looked at me with complete attention. "Okay," he said carefully. "Tell me what happened." So I did. I told him everything. Linda's surprise appearance at the boutique, her public criticism of my choices, her verbal attacks on my career and my fitness to be a mother, and finally, her throwing our baby's clothes on the floor. I told him about Dr. Rodriguez's intervention, the medical validation of my choices, and the job opportunity that had emerged from the confrontation. Michael's expression changed throughout my story, shifting from concern to confusion to growing anger. "She threw the baby clothes on the floor?" he asked when I finished. "In front of other customers?" "On the floor," I confirmed, like they were garbage. He was quiet for a long moment, processing what I'd told him. "And this doctor? She really said all those things about Mom's behavior. She called it abusive, Michael. A pediatrician with 22 years of experience said your mother's behavior was abusive and potentially harmful to our baby." Michael ran his hands through his hair, looking more conflicted than I'd ever seen him. "I can't believe Mom would actually throw things on the floor. That's so extreme." "It was the culmination of months of her undermining me," I said gently. "Michael, this isn't just about today. This is about your mother's refusal to respect me as an adult, as your wife, and as the mother of your child." "But she loves you." "No, she doesn't," I interrupted. "She tolerates me because I'm married to you. There's a difference." Michael was quiet again, clearly struggling with this new perspective on his mother's behavior. "What do you need from me?" he finally asked. The question surprised me. Usually, our conversations about Linda ended with Michael making excuses for her behavior and asking me to be more understanding. This was the first time he'd asked what I needed. "I need you to set boundaries with your mother," I said. "Clear, firm boundaries about her role in our lives and our parenting decisions. And I need you to enforce them, even when it's uncomfortable." "What kind of boundaries?" "She doesn't get to criticize my parenting choices. She doesn't get to undermine my decisions about our child. She doesn't get to make me feel guilty for being independent or successful. And she absolutely doesn't get to have input on how we spend our money." Michael nodded slowly. "That seems reasonable." "And Michael," I added, "if she can't respect those boundaries, then she can't be around me. I won't expose myself or our baby to that kind of negativity." That got his attention. "Sarah, you can't ask me to choose between you and my mother." "I'm not asking you to choose," I said carefully. "I'm asking you to protect your wife and child from harmful behavior. There's a difference." Just then, my phone rang. It was Linda. "Don't answer it," Michael said quickly. "Let me handle this." But I was done letting other people handle things for me. I answered the call. "Hello, Linda." "Sarah, I think we need to clear the air about what happened today." Linda's voice was tight and controlled. "I may have overreacted, but I was just so concerned about the baby." "Linda," I interrupted calmly, "I don't think we need to clear anything. Dr. Rodriguez made the situation quite clear. My choices are medically sound, my research was thorough, and your behavior was inappropriate." Now, Sarah, that doctor didn't understand the full situation. "She understood enough," I said firmly. "And honestly, Linda, I don't think this conversation is productive. I'm going to let you talk to Michael about establishing some new boundaries for our family moving forward." I handed the phone to Michael, who took it with a look of determination I'd never seen before. "Mom," he said, "we need to talk." What followed was the most difficult conversation Michael had ever had with his mother, but also the most necessary. I listened from the kitsmith as he calmly but firmly explained that Linda's behavior at the boutique was unacceptable, that her constant criticism of me had to stop, and that she needed to respect our decisions as parents. The call lasted over an hour, with Linda cycling through denial, anger, bargaining, and finally, grudging acceptance. I heard Michael say things I'd never thought he'd say to his mother. "No, Mom, that's not negotiable. And if you can't respect Sarah, then we'll have to limit your involvement in our lives." When he finally hung up, he looked exhausted but relieved. "How do you feel?" I asked, settling beside him on the couch. "Like I should have done that years ago," he admitted. "I kept telling myself she meant well, but hearing you describe what happened today. God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have had to deal with that alone." You're dealing with it now," I said, taking his hand. "That's what matters." 2 weeks later, I had my first meeting with Dr. Rodriguez at her practice in Beverly Hills. The Cedars-Sinai Pediatric Center was everything I'd imagined. Modern, welcoming, and bustling with families who clearly trusted their children to this team of experts. Dr. Rodriguez's office was lined with medical journals, child development books, and photos of smiling families. She greeted me with the same warm professionalism she'd shown at the boutique. "Sarah, I'm so glad you reached out," she said, gesturing for me to sit in a comfortable chair across from her desk. "I've been thinking about our conversation, and I really believe you could help us bridge the gap between medical research and practical parenting advice." She outlined her vision: a series of blog posts, social media content, and eventually video materials that would translate complex child development research into accessible guidance for new parents. The goal was to help families make informed decisions based on current medical knowledge, rather than outdated traditions or internet myths. The pay would start at $50 per hour for writing, with bonuses for content that performs well, she explained. If things go well, we'd look at bringing you on as a consultant for our new parent education program. I tried to contain my excitement. $50 an hour was more than I made at my current job, and this was work I could do around my pregnancy, and eventually, my baby's schedule. "I'd love to start with a trial project," I said. "What did you have in mind?" Dr. Rodriguez smiled. "Actually, I was thinking you could write about choosing baby clothes and nursery items. After what I witnessed at Little Luxuries, I think you could help a lot of parents understand why organic, chemical-free options aren't luxury purchases. They're health investments. Over the next month, I threw myself into the project with the same research intensity I had applied to my baby's nursery. I interviewed pediatric dermatologists about fabric sensitivities, consulted with child development specialists about visual stimulation, and reviewed dozens of medical studies about environmental toxins and infant health. The resulting article, The Science Behind Safe Baby Choices, a research-based guide to nursery essentials, was published on the Cedars-Sinai parent blog and shared across their social media platforms. Within 48 hours, it had been shared over 5,000 times and generated hundreds of comments from grateful parents. "This is exactly what we needed," Dr. Rodriguez told me during our follow-up call. "You've taken complex medical information and made it accessible without dumbing it down. Parents are actually changing their purchasing decisions based on your article." The success of that first piece led to more opportunities. I wrote about safe sleep practices, the importance of tummy time, and how to choose developmentally appropriate toys. Each article performed better than the last, and soon I was fielding requests from other pediatric practices who wanted similar content. 3 months after the Little Luxuries incident, I was earning more from my freelance writing than from my full-time marketing job. When TechFlow Innovations offered me a 4-day work week to accommodate my growing writing business, I jumped at the chance. The financial independence was wonderful, but the personal validation was even better. After years of having my intelligence questioned by Linda, I was being recognized as an expert in child development and family health. Parenting magazines started reaching out for quotes. A major baby product company asked me to consult on their marketing strategy. Most importantly, I was helping other parents navigate the overwhelming world of baby gear and child development with confidence and scientific backing. But the transformation wasn't just professional. My relationship with Michael deepened in ways I hadn't expected. The boundary-setting conversation with Linda had been a turning point for him, forcing him to examine patterns he'd never questioned before. "I started therapy," he told me one evening as we assembled the organic cotton crib sheets I'd bought at Little Luxuries. Individual sessions to work on the codependent relationship with Mom. I looked up from the instruction manual, surprised. "Really?" "Dr. Martinez says I've been trained from birth to prioritize Mom's emotional needs over everyone else's, including my own wife's," he said with a rueful smile. "All top. Apparently that's not healthy for a marriage." The therapy was helping. Michael became more aware of when Linda was trying to manipulate situations, more willing to set boundaries, and more supportive of my independence. Our communication improved dramatically as he learned to address conflicts directly instead of asking me to accommodate unreasonable behavior. "I never realized how much energy I was spending trying to keep Mom happy," he admitted during one of our evening walks. "It left nothing for focusing on what would actually make our family strong." Linda's adjustment to the new reality was gradual. The first few weeks after the boutique incident, she tested every boundary Michael had set. She called constantly, dropped by unannounced, and made passive-aggressive comments about some people being so sensitive. But Michael held firm. When she showed up at our apartment without calling, he didn't let her in until she agreed to respect our request for advance notice. When she criticized my pregnancy choices during family dinners, he immediately shut down the conversation. "Mom, we've discussed this," became his standard response. "Sarah's decisions are well-researched and supported by medical professionals. This topic is not open for debate." The turning point came when I was featured in a Los Angeles Times article about evidence-based parenting. The piece highlighted my work with Dr. Rodriguez and included several quotes from other pediatricians, praising my ability to translate medical research for parents. Linda read the article 3 times, according to Patricia, who called to tell us about Linda's reaction. "She's actually proud," Patricia said, sounding surprised. "She's been showing the article to all her friends, telling them her daughter-in-law is published in the Times. It was a small step, but it was something." Linda began asking about my writing projects during family dinners, showing genuine interest for the first time since I'd known her. She still occasionally made comments that crossed boundaries, but Michael had gotten much better at redirecting the conversation. The real test came when our son David was born 6 weeks later. I'd been terrified that Linda would use the chaos and vulnerability of new parenthood to reassert her control, offering unsolicited advice and questioning every decision Michael and I made. Instead, something unexpected happened. Linda arrived at the hospital with a gift bag full of organic cotton onesies, the exact same brand I'd bought at Little Luxuries. "I read your article about fabric sensitivity," she said somewhat sheepishly. "I wanted to make sure David had the safest, most comfortable clothes possible." It wasn't a full apology, but it was acknowledgement. Recognition that my research and choices had value. Recognition that she had been wrong to dismiss them so harshly. Over the following weeks, Linda showed restraint I'd never seen from her before. She asked permission before offering advice. She complimented my breastfeeding dedication instead of suggesting formula would be easier. She even shared my article about safe sleep practices with her book club, praising my expertise. "It's like she's a different person," Michael marveled one evening as we watched Linda gently reading to David, following all the guidelines I'd established for interaction with our newborn. "She's not different," I corrected. "She's just finally respecting boundaries." Amazing what that can do for a relationship. The writing business continued to flourish. Dr. Rodriguez offered me a part-time consulting position developing educational materials for their new parent classes. 2 other medical practices hired me to create content for their patient families. A major parenting website offered me a monthly column. By David's 6-month birthday, I was earning 60% more than my previous marketing job, working flexible hours from home, and building a reputation as a trusted voice in evidence-based parenting. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came when Linda called to ask for my advice. "Sarah," she said, her voice humble in a way I'd never heard before, "my friend Carol is having her first grandchild, and she's questioning her daughter's choice to use cloth diapers. I told her you'd written about diaper safety and environmental impact. Could you send me that article to share with her?" I sent the article immediately, along with links to several other resources that might help Carol's daughter feel confident in her choices. "Thank you," Linda said, when she called back an hour later. Carol said the information was exactly what she needed to understand her daughter's decision. "You really have become quite the expert on these things." It was the first time Linda had ever acknowledged my expertise in anything, let alone parenting-related topics. The validation felt incredible, but more importantly, it felt like the beginning of a real relationship, based on mutual respect, rather than tolerance. 6 months after that humiliating scene at Little Luxuries, I was sitting in my home office, nursing David while editing an article about infant nutrition for a major pediatric journal. The organic cotton onesies from that fateful shopping trip were folded neatly in his dresser, still as soft and beautiful as the day I'd rescued them from the boutique floor. On my desk sat a framed photo from David's baptism, showing our whole family smiling together, Michael and me, my parents, and yes, even Linda and Patricia. In the photo, Linda was holding David, both of them dressed in organic cotton, and she was actually smiling at me with what looked like genuine warmth. It hadn't been an easy journey, but standing up for myself in that boutique had changed everything. Not just my relationship with Linda, but my relationship with myself. I learned that sometimes the most important growth comes from the most painful confrontations, and that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for building healthy relationships. The woman who'd been too intimidated to enter Little Luxuries was gone. In her place was someone who knew her worth, trusted her research, and refused to apologize for taking up space in her own life. 6 months later, I found myself back at Little Luxuries, but this time the circumstances were completely different. Emma, the sweet sales associate who'd witnessed my humiliation, was helping me select items for my friend Jessica's baby shower. Yes, I now had enough expertise and confidence that friends were asking me to help them shop for their babies. "Mrs. Smith," Emma greeted me with genuine warmth as I entered the boutique. "How's little David doing, and how's the writing career going?" It still amazed me that she remembered not just the dramatic confrontation from months ago, but the details of my life that had emerged from it. "David's wonderful, and the writing is going better than I ever imagined," I replied, bouncing my happy 6-month-old son in his organic cotton carrier. "Actually, I have some exciting news. I'm publishing a book." Emma's eyes widened. "A book? That's incredible." "The Evidence-Based Parent, Making Informed Choices for Your Child's Health and Development," I said proudly. "It's based on all the research I've been doing for the medical practices, plus interviews with pediatricians across the country. The publisher says it's exactly what parents need in an age of information overload." As I browsed the same displays where I'd been humiliated months ago, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed. The freelance writing had evolved into a full consulting business. I was working with pediatric practices across California, developing educational content that helped thousands of parents make informed decisions for their children. The book deal had come after a literary agent read my column in Parents magazine and reached out immediately. The advance was substantial enough that I could afford to leave my marketing job entirely and focus on building my parenting education business. But the professional success, while gratifying, wasn't the most important change. The real transformation was in how I moved through the world, with confidence, boundaries, and an unshakable belief in my own worth. You know, Emma said as she wrapped the items I'd selected for Jessica's shower, what happened here that day has become part of our customer service training. We use it as an example of how to support customers who are being mistreated by family members. I was touched and a little amused. Really? Really? Our manager says retail workers have a responsibility to create safe spaces for all customers, especially vulnerable ones like pregnant women. Your situation taught us that sometimes staying neutral isn't the right choice. As I left the boutique with David gurgling happily in his carrier, I thought about all the women who might benefit from that training, all the customers who would feel supported instead of silently witnessing family abuse. That evening, as I put the finishing touches on a blog post about setting boundaries during pregnancy, my phone rang. It was Linda. "Sarah, I hope I'm not interrupting your writing time," she said, her voice respectful in a way that still sometimes surprised me. "Not at all," I replied. "What's up?" "I wanted to ask you about something. My friend Margaret's daughter is pregnant, and she's having trouble with her mother-in-law questioning her birth plan. Margaret asked if I knew anyone who could talk to her daughter about standing up for herself. I immediately thought of you." I smiled, remembering the woman who 6 months ago had been the questioning mother-in-law, throwing my baby's clothes on the floor because she disagreed with my choices. "I'd be happy to talk with her," I said. "Why don't you give Margaret my number? Or better yet, I can send her some resources about communicating boundaries during pregnancy." "That would be wonderful. You know, Sarah, I've learned so much from watching you navigate all of this. You've shown me what real strength looks like." After we hung up, I sat in my home office, nursing David and thinking about the journey that had brought me here. The woman who had once been too intimidated to enter an upscale baby boutique was now someone other women looked to for guidance and support. The organic cotton onesies from that fateful day at Little Luxuries were still some of David's favorites. Every time I dressed him in them, I remembered not just the humiliation of that moment, but the strength I'd found in standing up for myself and my choices. Michael appeared in the doorway, home from his evening run. "How's my favorite parenting expert?" he asked, kissing the top of my head. "Grateful," I said simply. "Grateful for difficult moments that forced me to grow. Even grateful for that day at the boutique." I considered the question seriously. Especially grateful for that day at the boutique. If Linda hadn't pushed me to my breaking point, I might never have found the courage to set boundaries. I might never have met Dr. Rodriguez. I might never have discovered this career path that I love so much. And I might never have learned to stand up to my mother, Michael added. That day changed all of us. As I put David down for the night in his carefully chosen organic cotton pajamas, I thought about all the parents out there struggling with similar challenges. Overbearing family members, self-doubt, the overwhelming nature of making decisions for a tiny human being. That's why I want to share this story with you. Because if you're watching this and you're dealing with difficult in-laws, or if you're pregnant and feeling overwhelmed by everyone else's opinions about your choices, or if you're just tired of apologizing for taking up space in your own life, I want you to know something. You have the right to make informed decisions about your family. You have the right to set boundaries, even with people you love. You have the right to trust your research, your instincts, and your values, even when others question them. That moment in Little Luxuries, when I bent down to pick up my baby's scattered clothes from the floor, that was when I decided I would never again let someone make me feel small for making thoughtful choices about my child's well-being. Sometimes the most important growth comes from the most painful confrontations. Sometimes standing up for yourself in one moment can change the entire trajectory of your life. And sometimes what feels like the worst day can actually be the beginning of your best chapter. Have you ever had to stand up to difficult in-laws or family members who undermined your parenting choices? Have you ever found yourself in a public confrontation that ended up changing your life for the better? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content about evidence-based parenting, setting healthy boundaries, and finding your voice as a mother. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that their choices matter and their research has value. And remember, whether you're shopping for organic cotton onesies or making any other decision about your family's well-being, you don't need anyone else's permission to choose what's best for your child. Trust yourself, trust your research, and never, ever let anyone convince you that wanting the best for your baby is anything other than exactly what good parenting looks like. Thank you for listening to my story. Until next time, keep standing strong and making informed choices for your family. You've got this, and your children are lucky to have a parent who cares enough to do the research and make thoughtful decisions about their well-being. Remember, you are the expert on your own child, and no one, no matter how loud their voice or strong their opinions, has the right to make you doubt that. Keep shining, parents. Your children need you to be confident in your choices, and the world needs more people willing to stand up for what they believe is right. See you in the next video.